kind of a surprise coming up here. Not.
Oh, yes.
It's pretty cool. And Shelby will show you here, because we love this banter session. We think that this banter session is just awesome. And we love to just chat. We love to chat. We are very chatty people. For those of you who love the Black Hills t-shirts, we decided as Wild West, we would create one for ourselves. And here it is.
Woohoo!
The Ranger came up with this idea and put the design together, and I am just totally excited about it. Again, you'll be able to purchase this t-shirt off the Spearfish General Store, and I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's creative and cute and clever. And
then they'll be available at Way West, right?
Right.
Yes,
oh, yeah.
We will have some available at Way West as well. See?
I think we should probably use a little bit of this opportunity to talk about Amanda and Jeremy's class that's coming up.
Yeah, so our class actually plays off of the Hackin cast we're about to do. It's all about tabletop exercises and IR playbooks. We go over the 4-day period, right? 4 hours a day, and go from somebody that may have never even heard of a tabletop, let alone participated in one, and kind of teach you how to play those out and build one internal to your organization. And we split it up in the second half of the training. So the second 2 days are all gamified tabletops. And we break everyone out into their own companies, right? So we might have a nuclear power plant company, and we might have like a hospital and a startup and all these little companies within the class, and each person is assigned a job in that company. So maybe you're the CEO, maybe you're the intern, maybe you're a SOC analyst, and from those positions inside your company, we will throw out different situations and scenarios for your company to be in. And you roll a die and see kind of where you end up, and you tie all of what we've learned so far, so the tabletop stuff and the playbooks, that's all tied into those scenarios as well. So when you're done, you already have, a scenario for like ransomware at this healthcare company, and it's in the playbook, and we do after action reports, and we just see like what company survives, right? Sometimes they all do, sometimes none of them do. We've had like nuclear disasters before, and companies going bankrupt, but it's a whole lot of fun because gamifying training is I think it always helps it stick.
Yeah, we use all the fun RPG rules, so everything is dice rolling and decision based. So you get to interact with your team members and go through and potentially be in a title role or job that you're not normally. I mean, you have to fit within those parameters, which it's really good for a lot of people, a mix of management as well as technical, to understand management decisions as well as to understand the technical caveats that exist in some of our systems or that aren't possible. We all wish we had a centralized log system that could spit out reports immediately, but sometimes that's not the case, or those things aren't logged. So you really kind of go through some of those scenarios. So we have demo lab in between that to enhance some of the learning as you go through the different scenarios.
On our paid training, our anti-siphon training, 10% of the revenue goes to a charity. Amanda, Jeremy, do you have a favorite charity that you like to support? Is that? That's right. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. So Mental Health Hackers is a nonprofit that I started 2 years ago now. It's just to bring awareness of mental health issues to the InfoSec community. When we were doing live in-person stuff, we actually had rooms at conferences that you could go chill out in and kind of get away from the noise and the hustle and everything, and just kind of chill out, maybe, learn some coping strategies. We provide chair massages and yoga and a bunch of fun, like de-stressing activities. And then when COVID happened, we kind of had to pivot and do some stuff online. So we have a form on our website called Mental Health Hackers Feel Good Boxes, and you can actually nominate someone that you think might need a little pick-me-up. And we contact that person and say, hey, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. Are you comfortable giving us your address? Because, we don't want just to receive random addresses. And then if they're cool with it, we send them like a little personalized box full of mental health hacker stuff and like tea and fidget thing, like just a cool little box of stuff. And then we're also doing a hacker painting class in mid-May. So we do a bunch of different little things. Mm-hmm.
So what's the website, Amanda?
Yeah.
mentalhealthhackers.org.
I just put it in and pinned it as well. So make sure you check that out. See how people can support.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like
such a great, especially in today's, in today's world. What a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll definitely be checking it out.
Yeah, I just did a talk on it last night, and one of the things I point out is like I never thought I'd actually be talking about mental health every day, because like I just struggled with it on my own and I never actually talked about it to anybody. And now people just want to talk about it to me all the time, which is fantastic. Like that's really our purpose, right? It's kind of like the AA for mental health. Hey everyone, welcome. Yay, it's St. Patrick's Day. As you can tell, both Jeremy and I are wearing our awesome, St. Patrick's Day garb. And this is a special St. Patrick's Day version of our tabletop training intro. So I'm going to start off by introducing ourselves if you don't know who we are. My name is Amanda Berlin. I'm the lead incident detection engineer at Blue Mirror. I'm the CEO of Mental Health Hackers, and I am on the Breaking Down Security podcast and the author of Defensive Security Handbook, and now co-owner of Cybersecurity Conference Training with my co-owner.
So I'm Jeremy Meal, if you don't know me, Cyborg 00101 on Twitter. And I'm information security officer for local government, but former Fortune 500 and a lot of other types of contracting, focusing on all aspects of both physical and cybersecurity, and also co-owner of Cybersecurity Conference Training.
Which is not a shell corporation, as much as it sounds like one.
And we're here to give you intro to tabletops. If you security, defense, and detection tabletop exercises is one of the classes that we give at conferences. Done about maybe how many trainings?
4, I think.
4 trainings.
At this point, until COVID hit, and then
until COVID hit. And
now we're just doing them online.
Correct.
So here's our agenda. We're going to go just take a little overview of intro for tabletops as well as playbooks. So just describing what they are and what they're for and kind of how to do them. And then we're going to combine some playbooks into tabletop. And then go last couple slides is just to go over what we're going to do in our training, kind of cover how we do the gamification of it, because it can kind of be used like that pretty much anywhere, internal to your company or whatever. And then we have webcast loot. So we have stuff that you can download because you are jumping on this webcast. We have stuff specifically for you guys to download. So we will give that link out also.
So we always start out with overview of what tabletop exercises are. A lot of people may be familiar with them, but we've learned as we've gone through a lot of tabletops, some of the best ways to conduct them in a more productive manner. Some organizations do full day tabletops, some do full week tabletops. I've seen 2-week tabletops, but getting into like a 15-minute or essentially an hour tabletop with specific goals and objectives is very beneficial if you do it at the right frequency. And going over the importance of an after action report, and not only in a tabletop exercise but also in an incident, so there are actionable items after, for any type of gaps that's seen inside of an incident, or even during the tabletop, getting executive sign off or management sign off so you can actually go fix those things instead of complaining about them and talking about them the same, every month or every week or every day that you do a tabletop. Here are some just general tabletop instructions, breaking it into meaningful learning points. Again, read it loud and clear for all to hear. It should have a leprechaun there. It's one missed opportunity there. Really have a discussion page after. So you go through the main tabletop, which is a scenario that is meant to get you out of your comfort zone and test policies, procedures, or any type of detection controls. So you really want to have main talking points around your incident response framework. So that might be identification, detection, containment, mitigation, and preventative and communication at some point. So again, it's overall is to have productive, engaging discussion with people that you might not have day-to-day interaction with. And there's the do's, but also the don'ts, right? Don't, you can go to the what ifs, down the what if rabbit hole. You also can be that person that no one wants to be. And if you don't know that person, then you might want to, look
Make
at
sure it's not you.
make sure.
Sometimes it's me. Like,
Yeah.
you have that argumentative person that always just wants to throw, like, I get devil's advocate, right? Like, you want to throw wrenches and things. It's a tabletop. It's definitely something that's wanted and needed in an exercise like that. But, you don't want to be overly combative or argue just for the sake of arguing. It's supposed to be, semi-believable, scenario that might happen in your organization.
And again, one of the main things is don't forget to complete that after action report and follow up with it. It's important to do that. It's also important not to put unrealistic goals on there. We all would love to have all the things and have all the processes and procedures, but we have to understand what's realistic for our organization. That might take some time to iron out.
And these 15-minute tabletops don't have to be super organized when you first start out either. I mean, we did one at my company the other day just in Slack, right? You go into your main Slack channel, you're like, all right, what would happen if the lead developer's laptop was unlocked? Somebody broke into their house and stole it. Now, everybody's working from home, at least in our company, and you kind of have to change those tabletop scenarios around. Maybe somebody did break in and steal the laptop. What happens next, right? You have potentially salespeople in that Slack channel, and marketing, at least in our case, right? And development and security people. Like, everybody gets to kind of see the thought process on walking through just that short tabletop exercise, and then you kind of just go from there.
So here's our tabletop scenario for this webcast. Again, we can't, we have to get on the bandwagon with everyone else. If everyone doesn't have some type of SolarWinds or Microsoft Exchange tabletop now, it's probably beating you guys to death hearing about it and every other webcast about it. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Right. And that's a good thing that you can kind of take away from all of this stuff that's happening. Even if it doesn't happen to you, it's still useful in that you can use it for a tabletop. Pretty much happens with any breach or vulnerability out there. Just throw something that just came up in the news in as a tabletop, and you can benefit by updating your playbooks and everything.
And sometimes tabletops aren't just for technical or IT. I know that with the stuff with SolarWinds and Microsoft, it's getting up to the executive level, just like WannaCry and a bunch of other global kind of outbreaks and attacks. But now these have been so sensationalized and important and critical that executives are starting to listen more and more. And this is the perfect one, type of one, to get in front of them, even if you don't have something like Microsoft Exchange. If you don't have Microsoft Exchange and you dodge the bullet to the cyber lords of having Office 365, then it's definitely worthwhile to get your executives to say, what if we did have this? Because if it's not Microsoft Exchange, it could be something next, right? It could be just Active Directory. It could have been some type of other web CMS. It could have been something else public facing you might have. I'm sure F5 had some vulnerabilities in the recent as well, but it could be just as critical. So you start to have those conversations now, so they know when you might have to make the determination, or your management might have to make the determination to shut everything off. You got to really understand that. I know some companies that have completely shut down globally because of the Microsoft Exchange vulnerability. So back to our tabletop scenario. Suspicious connections are discovered from an email server to a foreign country, in this case, Ireland. Further investigation discovers the web shell, commonly called lucky alarms, is there, and potential privilege escalation has happened through administrative accounts. So how do you respond, right? So you have a web shell that is at least been named, right, by some type of ATP, and it's going back to a foreign country, and you have potential privilege escalation to administrative accounts that might have additional access throughout your organization. So what do you do? So inside these tabletop scenarios, we have discussion points.
The answer to how you respond isn't run around screaming.
Correct.
Or shouldn't be.
How do you find the capabilities? Again, you have to go through, and I'm not going to go through and read all of these, but you really have to understand how your systems are interacting and what you can go through and determine by a matter of fact or some type of proof. With these type of scenarios, there's always additional investigation and items coming out, so you can never jump to conclusions. So sometimes you have to assume the worst because you can't prove it's nothing, not the worst, right? You can go through these again. If it's a critical system, who's responsible for it? What's the downtime? What's your SLA requirements? If you have other types of businesses, you have to think of the larger picture. And sometimes in our technical responses on the incident response, we are given one job to investigate and find, and then we might not be included, or other people might not be included in the bigger picture. These are what these tabletop scenarios get everyone to understand. And in our training, you get to understand how to make those decisions and what is potentially involved in some form or fashion. What's going to prevent you from happening again. That's the first thing that, after everything settles, your CEOs or your executive, whoever, or your board is going to come and say, how do we make this that it can never happen again? And obviously there's nothing, right? There's nothing that's going to make it never happen again, because security is never 100%. But what can you do? You have to give solutions, and you have to have that conversation or communication in some way that makes it better and strengthens that relationship, because a lot of things are just about trust. Other things that we do with our tabletop scenarios is we tie them to the NIST functions, which have crosswalks to other types of compliance frameworks. That helps when you go through the tabletop scenarios that you've done throughout the whole year, and you can see all the NIST functions that they've tied to and say, hey, we might want to do them in these type of functions. We've never done one focusing just on recovery. And again, every incident can have the full gamut of functions, right? But you want to focus on one thing. So in one scenario, even though the incident response might be important, you might want to focus just on the recovery, right? A lot of people focus on what's cool and what's magically just delicious is the incident response and all that stuff. But you want to focus on all aspects. So sometimes you need to focus on some of the functions versus some of the other ones to get the most out of it.
Yeah, and sometimes that might get the ball rolling on a larger project, right? You don't always want to rely on this kind of stuff actually happening to get the budget. A lot of times that is what happens, right? Nobody has a security budget until they get breached. Sometimes they don't even have a security department until they get breached. And then a company is going to find out that the preventative measures that you can take and logging and all that kind of stuff that doesn't give you an immediate return on investment definitely will in the long run if you end up losing all of your intellectual property, or your Exchange server has to be shut off for 2 weeks, costing you potentially a lot of business. That's why we try and push everybody should do tabletops, I feel no matter what industry that you're in, whether it's a cyber tabletop or not. They're going to help your business overall mature and get to the point where at least what your weaknesses are, right? Tabletops aren't going to be the only thing that tell you that. You have to have a vulnerability program and pen testing and actual security program, but it's that just layer on top that kind of gives you I get to sit down and be calm and work through this with not only my team of whoever's in the security department, but also I didn't think of this marketing aspect of it, or I didn't think of this legal aspect of it. You might be tied to different compliance standards when it comes to that kind of stuff. So actually walking through all of those is a huge benefit to the organization as a whole.
And we're just to kind of go through some of the NIST functions. Inside of these quick ones, we have the NIST cybersecurity framework. Those do align to the NIST 800-53 controls as well, or the framework. And then we have a crosswalk to all. If your organization's ISO or COVID, whatever it is, we try to crosswalk those. And those crosswalks aren't anything we made. That's just what's already out there that we help people understand, make them aware of. Because sometimes you'd be surprised the amount of people that recreate what's right out there. We just want to make sure that people know that the crosswalks are out there, and to just, it makes it a lot easier to tie these scenarios to the function. So yeah, so once you go through these type of tabletops and you discuss those questions and you have good, meaningful conversations, first off, always have someone that's taking notes. If that's somebody that's included into it, or most likely it's best to have a scribe that isn't directly included into it, or potentially, as we've seen, the intern is always good there. But anyone to take notes as you're going through that, to make sure that you can put things in an after action report. This is a quick example of an after action report, and obviously recording who's involved, any type of major strengths. It's always good to have strengths determined inside of there, because it can get depressing extremely fast when you have these. So make sure that you're always denoting your strength, even if it's something like, hey, we had that system, it's been logging fine, right? Those type of things, also are good for management to see that it's not just everything that's wrong, it's building, and expanding what's currently there or what needs to be there. And again, always have sign off on upper management. If that's, mid-level management, executive management, the higher the better, to make sure that these things get addressed in some form. Again, have determining short-term and long-term recommendations are always good. Management likes prioritization and things. So some things might require a large amount of staff in your budget, and that's just the nature of it. So what can you do to get, somewhere in between?
And we're going to, in the link that we provide later for the webcast, there's actually this after action report template is one of the documents that are in the Google Drive. So you can see the whole thing and use it if you want to. And Jeremy mentioned always mentioning your strengths, right? Because you're never going to walk into something like this and you're never going to have everything, unless it's something super simple to the point, but that's not the point of tabletops, right? You want to think outside of that box. And then one of the major strengths, even if you're asking yourself the question of what our major strengths are during this tabletop, running the tabletops, one of them, right? Like you're already here talking about it and having a conversation and running through it and potentially updating policies, procedures, and that kind of stuff. So that's always going to be a strength, no matter what you run through. And that's the whole purpose of it, is just to get a little bit better.
So with the tabletop exercise being only a very, very small portion of our class and what we want to get across, but it's also how playbooks can tie into incident response. So as you go through these tabletop scenarios, you can have all your policies and procedures, and then playbooks is a little more of a combination of those, just like the rugby play that I have there. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's the Irish football union. Ireland Rugby Football Union.
University?
No, it's a union.
It's a union.
Having playbooks a little more of a flexible procedure that has technical items denoted. So you can go through and know specifically when you have a type of response, what to do, and where are all the things to build it for you to make those playtime decisions, right? So sometimes you have to read and, read whatever plays in front of you. And that's how, you have to operate as an incident responder sometimes, then having a predetermined tree of procedures that you're following, because it's never going to work that way. You need some type of flexibility, and that's where playbooks come in. So we go over overview of the playbooks. We give a few examples of playbooks. Again, they always look different, any organization. So we only give a foundation understanding, and then we're going to use some specific playbooks in our trainings. But again, they can look different, all shapes and sizes, any place. Some really interesting ways, and it's only gonna, you only get more experience by going out there and searching and seeing how people do playbooks differently.
I found a better use of that acronym.
Next slide.
Sorry.
So again, why playbooks? I kind of discussed that. So the slide is a little redundant, but everyone during post-pandemic stuff, did anyone have, I'm sure a lot of people might have had some playbooks or pandemic response plans, but I don't think really anyone did it very well, but we got through it. But a lot of people were running crazy the first couple months, trying to give, VPNs, laptops to everybody. So again, think about, playbooks. They're very important outside just the plans. Plans only get reviewed, yearly, maybe quarterly if you're, have a mature organization. Playbooks need to be constantly organic and building based on your detection or your, tool sets you have available.
So a question from chat is, how do you integrate a playbook? Do you use source solution or do you just write them out and have them ready? Again, depends on your organization, whether you can afford all of those tools, right? Source solutions can be kind of expensive sometimes. But those playbooks don't necessarily have to be integrated, but in further along programs, they definitely should be, right? You can tie those playbooks into your SIM or into any kind of SOAR you have, right? Whether it's controlling your endpoint agents or Active Directory or websites, whatever it may be, you can tie it into that kind of stuff, just depending on what you use. Again, there's a large variety of different tech stacks and abilities when it comes to that kind of stuff. But until you get to that point, really all of these are just written out. They may tie to processes and procedures. They may point to specific job roles, right? You never want to point to a specific person and be like, oh, step 3, contact Ann in accounting. You never want to do that, right? Because this is something that's going to grow. And if you need to escalate and you don't know where to go at that point, you need to know, the specific role or at least the area to direct yourself in when it gets to that point.
Yeah, I will give, my opinion, again, not based on any of my employers or future employers, but just if you're asking about tools, playbooks, just delete tools and delete or specific system tools out of your brain. Think about just writing some pen on paper or something on. I always tell people, even if it's crayon on napkins, write something down, write a process down, because no matter what tool you want to tie into, you have to have it written down. You have to have the process, even if it's a lot larger than having something like a SOAR. A lot of people aren't going to be able to not only afford a SOAR solution, but not even have the foundational needs for the SOAR to have any type of actionable, information or tie-ins, right? So you got to get the process. So I recommend just on paper, just almost like a procedure document, but just in playbook form. So there's a lot of different methods out there of how to do it, but again, just documenting the processes and everything. So we'll get more and more about specific examples. Next slide. Here is documentation process, having titles and categories, right? There's a lot of good information out there how to categorize your playbooks. So you want to make the category make sense for whatever your industry or your organization uses for incident response. And if you don't have a very mature or documented incident response process or classification, then you definitely have to do that before you start using playbooks. Again, I'm not saying that you couldn't, but you should have your identification and of instances down packed so they can tie to your playbook. So again, your playbooks are tying into your incident response framework.
And you can use this one. This is another one that we're going to include in the link at the end of the presentation. Is just a template to use if you don't have one already for playbooks. And then we'll go also into, actually, I think we include an example also in the share of like a completely filled out playbook. What you should do at what step, what your investigation is going to be, what the responses should be. And again, it's going to change depending on your tech stack and who you have involved, whether you have a MSSP that needs to be contacted or you have, your whole internal DFIR team and everybody else, right? It could include a lot of different roles and technologies and stuff.
One of the main things that all playbooks should have is an objective statement. Again, it's just a base of what this is and what's the overall goal. As you get down, it's highly recommended to have scope and applicability. And these things aren't things that are every time read, right? That when you do a playbook, but they define the playbook's existence. And so if you have new staff, this is where these type of things become critical, because they can go and read your playbooks and see why and then ask questions on them. Other than a lot of people that have more experience, they'll jump right to the playbook, methodology and procedures, essentially the meat and potatoes right there of the whole process. Again, and some experienced senior levels, they might never even look at the playbooks, but they know what to follow because they've been doing it. But, sometimes it's always, oh, well, it's John that does that and he just knows how to do that. And he always handles our phishing responses. So if John's not available, I don't know how to, pull back emails or reset accounts. Well, maybe someone else can go look at that playbook and see at least the framework, what he uses and what systems he uses to do that consistently. And then reporting, right? So there's some playbooks might have this, some playbooks might, but you have to have some type of reporting mechanism there of when do you need to do a full report versus not doing a report. When do you email all your users that there's a phishing attack, and when don't you do that, right? So sometimes, this all might be, there might be different sections in each playbook, and you really have to, it depends. But again, we're trying to give you guys and everyone a base foundation.
So there's a lot of questions.
I've seen some, and I know that I know one of them about playbooks having like multiple levels and things like that for larger teams, and having different ones for multiple facet of incident. So incident classifications.
Right. So like if you end up with a web shell on your server that then turns into ransomware, but then spreads to something else, like that's a lot of stuff to pack into one playbook.
Right. So when you have an incident like that, normally, in my experience, and again, this differs a lot of places, is that your incident classification is based on first incident compromise. So if it's a web shell or if it's a phishing, it stays that even though that there's a multi-attack chain, right? And that's when each one might tie into the separate playbooks. So usually try to contain your playbooks like that. But I've seen a lot of places have general malware response playbooks that then just cover the gamut of an unclassified, malware incident, because you might not know how the initial compromise happened or the initial incident came to you, or it might have come to you incorrectly and it might be multifaceted. So you really have to use, best judgment on how to structure these playbooks. Usually a lot of places will focus on the top, 5 instances they've gotten last year and just build playbooks. They might not have playbooks for everything. It's not going to be a fully exhaustive list. Again, you have to start somewhere. And as you start with playbook development, you'll start to really, really see how it fits in your organization.
Yeah, because that malware infection for one company could just be like, all right, shut down, reimage, reboot, done. That's very simple and straightforward. Sometimes they don't even care about initial compromise or if it's going to happen again. It should be added, to find root cause, but we all work in the real world, right? You don't always have the time to find initial compromise every time. So smaller stuff like that can definitely be super easy and straightforward to the point until you decide that you need something more than that.
And I've seen other places do it even, I wouldn't say backwards, but another way around, where their playbooks aren't tied to actual incident classifications, but they're tied to the incident control or the incident response framework. So identification, how do you identify something? So they'll have an identification playbook where this is all the places that we use to identify what systems are or aren't. If you have 97 different CMDBs and you have Joe's spreadsheet and Alice's spreadsheet for each business unit of what systems they have, you're gonna have to document all that and see where those are. So when an analyst or an incident responder gets something in a certain business unit, they know that that's how they have to identify or contain. Maybe that business unit or that building location or subsidiary has different containment technology or containment levels, or maybe it's just the containment might just be cut off, WAN, link, whatever it is. You need to really know those things when you start to think about, some of your top incidences.
And then we move on to procedures. So in this case, I don't know if nobody knows, the northern pike that's displayed here is actually the official fish of Ireland. The things that you find out at 1 a.m. when you're, editing slides. So this procedure is for handling different employee phishing reports.
So just to go through the procedures are, again, the meat and potatoes of this. So these were the different, if you want to call them plays or, other, again, steps, potentially what you could do is how to search for IOCs, how to, is it a campaign? What's your threshold of, or do you care? Do you even track campaigns? You might not, right? Depending on your size, these playbooks might be, a lot different based on if you have a 1-person shop, a no-person shop, or a 20 or 100, person shop. What's your response procedures to alert your employees? You go down, what can you do inside? What capabilities? Removing emails from user boxes. Do you do custom PowerShell scripts? Do you have a SOAR tool? Do you have some type of other hooks in there? What is it? Where it's at, right? Again, each one of these response procedures might not even have the full procedure in it. They're just going to point to potentially another procedure document. Some people architect it like that. Some, don't, because they don't have, that many systems. So they all include it in one giant playbook. It's nothing anyone wants to hear. Everyone wants like exactly what to do and how to build playbooks. It's just not going to happen. You have to take in all this information, get a little experience around it, and then make the decision on what's best for your organization. And that's why we, instead of just giving playbook development classes, we give them with tabletop scenarios, because that's what drives the conversation of how a playbook can work in each organization.
And it helps you think from different perspectives too, right? So, he said we can't really run just, a playbook creation training, right? Because it's going to be so different everywhere. What you need to learn though is how to focus and direct those conversations with the right people and put things in the right order so that it becomes easier when you're looking at your, what way to go or how deep to go in that investigation.
You might have different final steps than others. And you have the investigation, you have the response procedures. Your final steps might be reporting. You might have a report. You might have a compliance report to the board. You might have internal policies and procedures. You might just document it, and it might need to be reported monthly. Or you might have, if it was that large, to focus on some of the gaps. Maybe you've noticed a lot of things that are in your playbooks, and you constantly will, and you're going to have workshops to continue to build those playbooks.
How would you frame a multi-team playbook effort from DFIR to security engineering? It's a very long answer, I think. And do they share a playbook or link to each other? I think we talked about linking to each other, because you can link back and forth to different playbooks and procedures when you're creating them. Just like we said a minute ago, right? You may have that initial compromise of the web shell, but we've all seen web shells turn into ransomware or turn into like a Bitcoin miner or whatever. So you can link different ones if you want. It's not necessarily always needed, but it could be helpful to be like, oh, I didn't even think to check for that kind of thing. So you can kind of go down those different paths if you need to.
And we'll see that a lot in, like, I see device forensics being talked about in the chat and linking. You might have, depending on your playbook, it might meet a threshold where you need device forensics. That might be because there was insider threat or something, or who knows what it is. So you link to different procedures. And those device forensics might go into more of a procedure base, because as long as you have a Windows 10 HP laptop or a MacBook, the procedures are going to be, at least of doing the initial device forensics, might be the same, even though you might investigate different things. But some people have playbooks around that, especially if you're talking about full forensics teams or a company that has forensics, because they have to go to a different level of investigation depending on what they're looking for. If it's
especially legally concerned.
And legally, yeah. So it's always good to have that linked out. So you might have to do device forensics. You careful with linking too much, you can definitely go to a rabbit hole where all of a sudden you have 2,000 linked playbooks, which can get you have to have a whole map and flow of how they all connect, which that might be okay for your company if you have 50 people, but it might not make sense if you have 10. So when we combined tabletops playbooks, we actually have our students make the tool the playbooks during the training, and you can only use the tools and processes that are in your playbooks during the tabletop. So if you try to use something outside or you don't have it documented, then you might take some type of penalty. And the same thing with any type of procedure. Or
that's kind of a spoiler alert to anybody watching right now, which they
won't remember. Let's say that's I mean, everyone is just like this right now, just watching this.
Done for the day.
So, but it really makes it engaging, and it shows, why it's important to have some of these. And, again, also shows you that you can't document anything. You're not going to be able to document everything. It just isn't going to happen. But that's why we have experience and training to be able to make, decisions within the playbooks and the response processes. So again, we roll the dice for successful procedure or process. So it gets really, tabletop and RPG like during the different organizations, and we'll get into that.
Everybody's gonna be looking back at their Hackin cast notes during training and like, you said I could do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next level is combining tabletops with playbooks, because in the end, that's what you're going to be doing in real life when you're doing any kind of IR internally or otherwise. So that's just kind of the leveling up, because everywhere else that I've been has only had like, this is a policy or procedure. There was never really any playbooks structured around anything. So combining the playbook, pointing to the policies and procedures, and then testing all of that through a tabletop is just kind of this full broad overview to make sure that you kind of have all your ducks in a row before something happens. So this is one of the examples that we'll go through. Jeremy mentioned we do some lab walkthroughs also. So, we may have a tabletop scenario for your company that is password spraying, right? Maybe you're not a red team or a purple team or whatever, and you don't know, or really it's going to benefit anybody, because it's going to show from beginning to end what the attacker can do, what you can do as a defender, what you can do for logging and alerting, what the run book, and then the procedure, all of that from start to end, we're going to go through, right? So this one, for example, is this privilege escalation on Windows. It's just a PowerShell malware dropper that dropped a Cobalt Strike. It dropped a Cobalt Strike thing. And this was actually not too long ago. It happened to one of our customers. So this is just, if you've never worked with PowerShell before, the execution policy is something that is set by default to restricted, and really it was put into place not really as a security mechanism, but more of a, like, I hope the admins don't shoot themselves in the foot by, running these unsigned PowerShell scripts that they don't know what they're doing. So it's kind of just put into place, kind of just a small set fail-safe. But a lot of ransomware, malware, whatever, by default, try and get around it, because that just means more things are going to work. There's a really good blog on the bottom there, Scott Sutherland wrote about 15 different ways to bypass execution policies. So if you really just go through all of those kind of things, this is one of the things that you'll see. So the first part is PowerShell.exe. That specifies, obviously, that the PowerShell exe is running. Dash no P stands for no profile. It's just a shortened version of that. And the PowerShell profile is just a script that runs when PowerShell starts. You can add shortcuts and aliases and all this kind of stuff to your profile. So malware usually wants to turn that off. So dash no P is for that. Dash C is the shortened version of dash command. So that's just, followed by the command it wants to run in PowerShell. Dot, what are we on? Dot. Yeah, so new object, system.net.web client is a .NET. It's in the .NET framework. It's a commandlet that just spins up an instance to do the next part, which is download that string from Bitly via the .NET web client. So that string in this case is via his blog post, and it's really just a echo command for this is my passport. My voice is my passport, verify me. So you can see that I'm in the restricted execution policy, but I'm still able to download and run this command in PowerShell. and potentially compromise the system.
So yeah, as we go through these type of technical tabletops, we actually interject these into as injects inside of the scenario, where we'll go through the scenario, what you respond to, your playbooks, and then we'll go into a demo lab to actually go through and show you how that attack works in a simple way. And as also, and we'll show you next, is how it's potentially logged as well. And these tabletops, again, as they kind of have some technical aspects, if you're a senior incident responder, this is hopefully, pretty, talking your language, but this is also made for management to see, how these things work and what takes actually to detect these things. So it's trying to level set, hold ground, and get everyone involved to show kind of each aspect of an incident response in a full tabletop.
Yeah, and I mean, if you are your internal incident response person and we assign you the intern role, you wouldn't know any of this anyways. You may just be hacking away at the keyboard as an intern and letting attackers in. So the next part we'll go through, like I said, we start at the attack and work our way through. So the next part we go through is how to defend an attack against this. This is the detection part. And on the right-hand side, you see the actual instance of this in Windows Event Viewer. This isn't a standard event that gets generated with Windows. This actually has to be turned on either in the registry or group policy. And I'll show that also in the class as how to set really good logging settings in group policy. I actually have something out on GitHub if you want to know about that kind of just does it all for you. And this is PowerShell command line logging, and it actually logs pretty much everything that's run at the command line. You can also have regular command line logging, but this generates in the Microsoft Windows PowerShell channel 4103 that a command was run. So it shows right here, and that is the legitimate one in the lab that I did, and then the one on the right-hand side is actually the one from our customer. And we actually have IR workflows inside of Blumira that's listed here. So that's why there are things that are blocked out, right? Because there's actual information. So this was the Cobalt Strike dropper that was on their web server, and you can see like the actual command that was run. It was like js.choosebudget.com over a weird port, and it was using that exact PowerShell exec bypass. NOP-W stands for hidden. That just sets the window style for the whole session. Quick couple minutes to go over the structure of the class too. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, and this is the fun part, right? These are where the game mechanics come. So in one of our training classes, we only have about a few hours dedicated to understanding the tabletop, going through a few of them just by tabletops, and then we go over as kind of a playbook workshop, and then we really the meat and then the whole over a lot of the class, most of the class is inside these scenarios where it's all the gamification and demo lab. So to kind of go through what I just explained is, you choose your industry sector and your company roles, right? And you'll build out your playbook and tooling with budget restrictions.
Yeah, so like if you get separated into, the startup, maybe you don't have your VC funding yet, so shoot, we can't afford any next gen anything, right? We're running, my Uncle Bob's old ASA from his closet, and everybody's bringing their own laptops, just Silicon Valley style. We're in somebody's living room. Or you could have like this huge, what's one of the bigger ones we have, like financial sector, right? There's this huge bank, right? And they have, they started doing cryptocurrency, so they have this huge budget around security. So they have next gen everything. That's a whole lot more to configure. So all of that kind of comes into play when you get put into your companies.
Right, and then as you go through it, you have to take notes, and you have to build and present an after-action report as you go through the scenario. You also have a lot of legal items you'll have to pertain to, as well as policy items, calls from the board, and things like that to explain what's going on. So it's a really interesting scenario that isn't all technical focused, but is try to be as realistic as possible. Some of the examples of the organizations you can see are here. So these are kind of how, we have the sizes, we have the budgets, and we have some of the other skills and determinations on them.
Yes. So like I said, AI Chain is the startup. So you have the budget's high on that one. I guess I forgot.
They have a lot of VC funding.
Yeah, the low budget's manufacturing. So they manufacture, I don't know if it's like computer chips or like eat chips. I'm not sure. Both are really considered manufacturing. But you have your different strengths and your different weaknesses, and so do your characters, right? So you may have, I think we actually go over that in the next slide. So these are the different features that we add, and each company can pick some. I think 2, most companies get 2. There's a special company that gets 3. And so we have like detection band power, right? You get a plus something modifier on all rolls related to threat intel. Or, maybe your backups and restorations always succeed. You could just get more on every roll if you have really good security training. So this kind of stuff also, like, it's just like being at any other company, right? You may go from company A to company B, completely different profile, completely different security program. Maybe, one had everything, one had nothing. And this is the loot part. So I am going to share on Discord. Well, I'll do it in Discord and I'll do it in the chat and go to webinar just in case you're not in Discord. So this is the webcast loot with all of the examples. So this is going to give you the after action report template. It's going to give you the playbook template. It'll give you the full playbook example of the phishing one, which is like 9 pages long. And it's an actual example of a full-blown playbook for that phishing. I mean, use it if you want to. That's what it's there for. And then we have a subsection of the one that we give away in the full class, which is the scenario list. And that gives away, let's see here, 1, 2, there's 4 different scenarios in there, and then what they are tied to in the NIST framework. So that is there as well. If you want to download / use any of that, it's all yours.
Our contact information is here. Feel free to reach out. Follow us on Twitter. You probably already follow Amanda because she's famous. Yeah. But feel free to reach out. It's good, getting different suggestions. Again, we've been doing this for a decent amount of time, but
that's my really loud Roomba.
But we're always looking for more, right? So we never pretend to know everything. There's a lot of people out there that do this, so we're always looking for more, and any way to include more things into our training and keep our training, as cheap as possible, to give it as actionable and give the most back to the community.
Yep. So yeah, that's us. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. I think we have a couple more minutes left. We go right to 2, right? Or no?
You're right. You do have another 7 minutes or so.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if we had ended 5 till or not. All right. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, we can answer them.
We tried to answer the questions through the chat.
I think we got all of them. I tried. So I'm glad there's 2 of us. Trying to do this with one person, I don't know how people do it. I would just be broken up, not really talking in complete sentences all the time, I think.
And Amanda, just to clarify, the G drive that you shared, that has the slide deck from today as well, correct?
It will in about 5 seconds.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Are you still doing the unicorn dice sets? Is that something?
In person, yes.
Okay.
But it's because we've not made a whole lot of money yet. We can't just ship dice sets to everybody. But if you come in person, we can give them to you.
And where are you going to be on June 15th?
This small conference that I don't know if anybody's ever heard of. No, I'm joking. At Wild West Hacking Fest, way west. Is that right?
Way west in Reno, Nevada. Yeah. Come on out. You have 2 opportunities to take the training class. with Amanda and Jeremy virtually on April 13th, and then again. You can take them both times. Why wouldn't you want to do that, Amanda? Jeremy, why wouldn't they want to take it twice?
We started doing this, and that's why we decided just to make a thing of it, because it's just super fun. And like, he's been RPG playing, very famous thing player for a while, and I just started not too long ago, and it's just a great way, I think, to do tabletops. I mean, rolling dice is always fun.
I mean, with the amount that you learn during the class, it's not even learning. I wish it was all of our knowledge that you're learning from, but it's really just the scenario producing knowledge and experience, and just the questions that you might not ask yourself until you're put in those scenarios, and just learning from different people. Because of the different people you're involved with and you're grouped with, you learn so much going through a couple days with those people that you really, make a lot of strong relationships, and you might learn a lot just from the people that you're teamed up with. So it's pretty interesting, the amount of stuff that not only we learn, but people learn, and no scenario is going to be the same, right? So you could take the class multiple times and have completely different outcomes and a whole different scenario if you have a different company. So you could definitely take it twice. Please do.
That's awesome.
And
That's
I'm
awesome.
seeing a couple questions. So the first question is, the April and June versions, is there any way they're going to differ other than the fact that it's in person? So I guess, is there anything special you're going to do because it's in person? I guess is another way to word it.
Well, so the in-person, so virtually, we have Discord bots and things that function for dice rolling. So in person, depending on the amount of people we have in person versus virtual during the June, the gameplay could slightly different, because you won't use the virtual technology like you will, and that won't really change the gameplay a lot, but you'll be more immersed. I mean, you'll have, you're definitely, it is a different experience in person, but we tried to make it.
And you get a free dice set.
And you get a free dice set, and it's a lot, but we try to do the best we can virtual.
Cool. Free stuff is always fun.
Right.
I think, and in person too, we'll be doing some additional things. We'll have, the setup the night before, so there'll be an opportunity to network with your instructor as well as other instructors, and, as well as other people who are attending the training.
That's true. If you do the training in June, not only do you get the training, but you get the conference with it as well, and everything that goes with the conference. So yeah, definitely a plus if you do it in person.
You can bring your own die and dice if you want to. So like, I have these nice nifty little blood spattered ones that I used last time. And then people have their own dice jails and rolling towers, and oh shoot, we do have the rolling towers, I think. We have cool rolling towers, not that you get to keep, but you get to use when you're in person, that kind of coincide with each company too.
The rolling towers make sure that it's COVID compliant, so nice. And we're making sure the rolling towers are always clean.
And we should both be vaccinated by then, I did think too. They just opened it up in Ohio in 2 more weeks. So
Nice.
Hey, Amanda, do you want to just talk a little bit again about your organization and what you do? Just for people who didn't hear it in the beginning, Mental Health Hackers.
I was going to say, which one?
Talk about whatever you want. You're captive.
So Mental Health Hackers, we're just a nonprofit that talks about mental health issues in tech. It started kind of just as me talking about my own struggles at conferences, and then I realized that I might be able to reach a broader audience than the 30 to 50 people that show up to watch me talk. So that's kind of where Mental Health Hackers started, as we did our first village at DerbyCon in 2018. And with overwhelming support, I never thought it was going to be something that I just continued to do all the time, or that became an actual business. So you can check us out at Hackers Health on Twitter or mentalhealthhackers.com. We have over 100 volunteers at this point and can run 6 villages simultaneously, which is crazy. And so if you want us to come to your conference, we can. We're doing painting class in May, and that page should be up in the next couple days, I believe, where we kind of ship you a painting kit, and we're going to do a hacker themed painting class.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it should be super fun. So
Amanda.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just wondering, is there a way people can help get involved with the mental health hackers?
Sure. You can email us at info@mentalhealthhackers.org. And that just kind of goes to all of our board members. There are 6 of us in all areas of tech and not tech too, honestly. But yeah, it's just kind of a peer support network that basically anybody can talk to. We have a whole lot of reference material like on our website and resources that you can just go to that we've kind of compiled. Yeah, so we're here.
I just shared the link again in Discord. So if you'd like, check out their website as well. It's in the Discord, it's pinned. So please go over there and support Amanda and her efforts. I think it's awesome what you're doing.
I'm also going to share the GitHub for our training as well as the one through Blumira that has the stuff about how to turn on different GPO logging stuff.
More webcast loot.
Yeah, right.
We're trying to make our webcast loot in a essential repository. So we're trying to put as much as we can up into the Git.
And I will pin that as well in the Discord. And it's pinned.
I hate
Awesome.
like slow-mo thing.
I know. It freaks me out every time. All right.
Awesome. Well, we've passed the top of the hour. So thank you again so much, Jeremy and Amanda, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody who attended, for joining us today. Velda, I don't know if you have any last words other than mentioning Way West one more time for everybody.
I do. Way West Hackin Fest coming up in person or virtual. You can attend either way. The conference dates are June. We'll start the late afternoon, June 16th, and we'll run it through the 18th, Friday the 18th. Again, there's information on the website, and the call for papers or the call for speakers is open. Come share your knowledge with us and with others as well. So it's going to be an awesome event. I'm just so excited. Reno is a great city. Amanda and Jeremy will be there in person. Shelby and I'll be there in person. You get to meet the gatekeeper in person. So
I'm so excited to travel again.
I know. Yes. Me too, Amanda. Me too. It's the awesome opportunity. So I hope to see as many of you there in person or virtually as possible.
Yeah, so come hang out with us in June. All right. And once again, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.